No. You're just going to have to do it all again here in a little bit. Just rest. Okay, all right, good enough. Ladies, gentlemen, and every conceivable coordinate between welcome to PAX 2016. It is my incredible pleasure to welcome to the stage BAFTA Award-winning writer, creator, God, Amy Hennig. All right. Now,
God,
all right,
no pressure at all
no,
with that intro.
It's fine. It's fine. Now, even though you have made a ton of authentically incredible shit, you did not want to just come out solo and speak. You wanted it to be a conversation, which I'm honored to do.
Well, thank you for thank you for agreeing to do that, because I couldn't have done it otherwise. Yeah.
It's the absolute least. But you said that at first you wanted it to be like a fireside chat, and so I thought that you meant like FDR's fireside chats.
Could do that.
So I was like, okay, we'll get her a desk and a microphone.
And like a stuffed Scotty dog?
Exactly. I mean, we're to deliver the entire thing. But you meant like actually like talking like by a fire.
I wanted to James Lipton you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But I can actually hook up the fire thing very easily back there. I'm pretty sure I have the fire going if the curtains would open. Yeah. So. Yeah. What I'm saying, Amy, is that at motherfucking PAX, we do it motherfucking right.
Where's the motherfucking band is what
That's
I'm
exactly
asking,
right.
actually.
Exactly right. So
I feel like we need a band now.
Well, you know what's weird is I authentically feel a heat, even though there could not possibly be. So I have a question for you,
This is going to get really distracting for them, isn't it?
Exactly. Here, don't worry, we can close it later.
All right.
If it impedes conversation, it's out. It's
No,
out. We're going to
it
edit
won't
it.
impede.
So, do you have any ideas, any input for me?
No, I'm done. I'm out.
About why and how two incredible introverts are now speaking in front of like 1,000 people?
Because this is easy, right? I mean, you guys probably feel this way too. Like, this is actually easy. What's hard is going to a party with 6 people, where you actually, right?
No, I think that you have enunciated something profound there. Because each of those 6 people, you have to like invent a version of yourself that can appeal to that person specifically, the toil.
And you have to listen to them. All right? This went completely one way.
Yeah, this is actually way better. No, I agree. And it's sort of dim. They may be ghosts. Like,
I don't have my glasses on.
Exactly right. So, but in terms of like the introverts' introspection, like that seems to go sort of hand in hand with writing. And I have a theory about that. And I think that generally speaking, introversion, when people talk about it, it's the idea that they're looking in. But I don't know any introverts that are actually like self-obsessed. All the introverts that I know are taking in reams of information all the time. I think that's a misconception about introspection in general.
Yeah, that you're somehow self-absorbed, but I think actually introverts are some of the best observers of human nature, which is, I think, why we tend to make good writers. Because I think we're actually very observant and empathic. And I imagine we probably have a lot of people in this room that would call themselves introverts, yeah? And I think that's...
Yeah, the quiet introvert clap. Yes, Amy Hennig, we are introverts also.
That's the answer to my question right there. And look, I mean, and I don't know how many of you who, may have a career that would get you up on a stage like this as well, would relate to this, or whether this is useful kind of advice, but we were talking about the fact that, like, it's like a muscle, being able to, like, kind of overcome the introversion and just go, okay, I got to flip a switch now. And that doesn't mean you're being inauthentic or not genuine or phony in some way. It's just like a learned skill to be able to go, okay, I can turn this on and, talk and relate, and then it's just exhausting afterwards, that's all.
But I do wonder, so as a person who writes and as a person who is introverted, in quotes, is that lift, like pulling a lever to switch a train track or something. It's heavy at first, and then it's clean. Is that the first experience we have making characters? Is that the first time we sort of make a version of a person, and then do we embroider from there? Like, is that the first type of character we learn how to make?
In terms of, like...
In terms of making a version of ourselves that is acceptable for public consumption.
I never even thought about it.
I got a lot of questions that are like that. I've got a couple pages, and then it says pause for
pause.
nodding crowd.
That's right.
Empowered by your words. So
that's right.
But,
well,
yeah.
look, I mean, I think people always say write what you know, but I mean, that doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I mean, I think you can write outside your comfort zone, but I mean, we're all human beings, and so you're constantly investing these characters with aspects of you, and you know, this sounds kind of embarrassing or silly, but I mean, especially with some of the stuff I've written, but like there's times when you're writing and it's sort of like you actually get kind of verklempt at the thing that you're doing, and it's not because you're sort of like amazed at yourself, it's just that you've hit a nerve that you didn't even know you were about to hit.
Right.
And so all of this stuff is pulling out of, you know, your own experience and our shared experience, so I don't think it's the first character, I think it's every character,
Yeah, so do you hear voices?
That's schizophrenia, Jerry.
Yeah. No, I mean, my theory in general about writers and creators in general is that, you know, 400 or 500 years ago, we would have just been burned at the stake. Like, the general way that we, what, is that?
Yeah.
Is that a novel observation?
I've got a story about that. I'll tell you after, because it would take up too much time.
I mean, I invent people who aren't real and talk to them, and then they talk to each other, and then I write it all down. That's awesome and normal. That's a cool thing to do.
And you know, when you are writing like that, you do get into a flow state, and we talked about that as well, where it's sort of like, it always seems so kind of like, I don't know. Ooh.
We had to put some more wood in.
It seems weirdly self-indulgent or highfalutin to go like, oh, the muse, right? And it's like, I don't think we like talking like that, but there is that moment where you're sort of like, you're fighting it, and then you just start writing, and you don't quite know where it's coming from, which is why it's always terrifying to pick up the pencil the next time, because you're like, well, I didn't really write that, it just came from somewhere.
Yeah,
right?
Because there's always that heavy lift at the beginning, and then it's almost like you have to forget to struggle. Like you have to be exhausted enough, like tired enough to just be like, okay, now I can do it. Like, too hard, he won't be able to get a line that he wants. He has to sort of be adjacent to the process. And when I try to type and look at the screen, like type like an adult real person would.
It's weird.
I can't. Yeah.
This means adult.
This is my job. When I try to type and look at the screen, I can't do it. In order for me to actually do it, in order for me to actually write, I have to be looking down here. I can't see it up there at all.
Oh, wow, that's interesting.
I completely freeze up if I try to do that.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's the idea of getting into a flow state rather than being in your head and editing yourself, right?
Exactly.
I mean, athletes have the same thing, you know, creative people. So it's just getting good at allowing yourself to do that.
So you have worked on all kinds of stuff. And I'm gonna get into the Wayback Device, if you will.
Electrocop.
Yeah. Electrocop. We won't go as far back as Electrocop. Yeah. I do like the fire, but I'm not sure that I need the audio of the crackling fire.
Is that what that is?
I feel like that's a step too far.
Yeah.
That's just weird. So it has to do with Legacy of Kain Soul Reaver.
It's really distracting.
Yeah. But do you remember any part of that story at all?
Well, this is my greatest fear, is that somebody will come up to me and ask me something about it, because I'm like, I don't know, you probably know it better than I do at this point, because you just sort of, you you write a thing and then you just move on and it's in the rearview mirror.
Well,
you
yeah,
know?
somebody was. I'll get a tweet from someone. It'll say, "Great comic today." I don't even know what comic that is. It went up like 4 hours ago. I can't. I was like, "Which one?" Thank you very much. I guess I'll go to my own website and read it. Like I have no idea.
Yeah.
Like I completely forget it. But I mean, we're talking about an angelic vampire who is his vampire master lord is jealous and
I remember it.
casts
I mean, you
him
don't have
down. Right. But then it's also like
tell
time
it from the
travel,
beginning.
and then he's
Actually, I'd love to see you try.
he's like, it's like time traveling kind of, but there's 2 dimensions, and he like is a sword
It's a big mindfuck.
in some ways.
Yeah. Yeah. Imagine how it felt writing it. Yeah.
I think I'm close.
8 years of mindfuckery.
Yeah, exactly. But that was one of the first times where, I mean, obviously the story was really big, and the world was big. Technically, you know, two worlds like stacked up on top of each other that would morph. But it was one of the first times where the conceptual space, like not just the physical space, but the stage of the game, where it's set, felt really vast and aware of me as a player. So generally, I mean, it's like the difference between eating dots and being Hamlet, right? It's that tier of shift. Like now I'm in a place that seems to understand what I'm looking
Eating
at.
dots, Pac-Man. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I was still trying to work that out.
Yeah. I'm in a place that seems to understand where I am and what I'm doing, and it is constantly surprising me with how thoughtful and conscious it is of where I am. And that's, I would say that that's a big thing that is sort of an Amy Hennig touchstone, is that these places, is that you have made places that are purposefully, consciously aware of the player, and that sets them in there. And I would love to know, obviously this is something you've been doing for, you know, years and years and years, but I would love to know like tell me about how you're doing that and why it feels like that.
Step 1.
For us.
Well, I don't think I was consciously doing it, so this is a little bit of...
So you're a genius.
Yeah. Now I'm consciously doing it.
Now I'm nervous.
No. But here's the thing, and look, this comes around to kind of general philosophical advice, you know, at the tail end of my gray hair career here, is sort of like, how do you work together? How do you work with your player and your audience?
So you consider the player...
A collaborator.
You consider the player like a fellow writer?
Yeah, right.
Okay, well that explains it.
Right, and so, you know, because there's a lot of debate around, you know, should games tell stories, which I don't understand that question. I mean, it's fine that they don't try, but I don't understand dogma, right?
Yeah.
And we were laughing because you know, my dogma is we must not be dogmatic, right? So there's room for all kinds of games, but I think we as human beings are natural storytellers and are seeking stories all the time. Therefore, we kind of like put them on things that don't even have stories, you know, explicitly, like sports, you know? I mean, we tend to wrap stories and narrative around things. I don't know where this question was going because it was coming off of your thing about should games tell stories. But, I know what it was, is the fact that, like, so you don't want to white knuckle your creation, right? Like, as a big control monkey, right?
Yeah, this is that, like, junior high dungeon master.
Yeah.
Right? He's got his story.
Well, there's some there's some grown-up game makers and filmmakers that are still that junior high dungeon master, right?
There's still that junior high dungeon master. It's just that they're behind a camera and they have a crew.
Yeah, and sometimes they do amazing work. But the point is that ideally, I think what you're doing is you are creating a creative space for people to share in the thing that we're making, right? As team members, as cast members. I mean, I've always brought the actors in that way too.
Right.
That, you know, we'll go in on rehearsal day and you look at a script and go get your pencils out. Let's make it better, all right? Tons of improvisation and collaboration. And the important part of that equation that I think we don't talk about enough is that the player is also our collaborator. And so you don't want to make a game, I don't think, well, again, being dogmatic, But I like the idea of making games that sit in the middle of the spectrum. It's not this sort of white-knuckle auteur thing.
Right.
And it's not devoid of story with this idea that the player is telling their own story. You know, in the middle there is something that is kind of open-ended enough that the player can actively collaborate by interpreting. And this is something we've talked about before.
Well, yeah, so that, you consider
Interpretation is
interpretation
interactivity.
simply interpreting the events as a form of gameplay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's just a form of, you know, collaborative investment on the part of your reader, viewer, player, right? Because this applies to any medium as far as I'm concerned. And I made the analogy that, you know, you can read kind of a dime store novel, and it's sort of like just kind of consuming junk food, and it's fine, but it's pretty much a one-way relationship between author and reader, right?
Yeah,
Versus
it's just a
reading.
gastrointestinal tract.
That's right. Whereas you read something, a poem, that takes a little mental muscle on your part to say, well, how am I going to interpret that experience? It feels far more interactive.
Yeah, it's ownership.
And the same thing with games, right? And again, this doesn't mean that one type of game that is more sort of, you know, kind of heavily authored than something else isn't good or bad, but like a game like Journey, I talk about a lot. Genova does this.
Oh, Journey, right.
Yeah. Or Inside recently is another good example of something that's very austere in its storytelling, but it's incredibly intentionally authored, right?
Yeah.
And but it's so confidently intentionally authored that they leave room for the player to collaborate as interpreter.
That's right.
All right. And so kind of coming full circle back, what you're saying is why does it feel like you are
Yeah, why
in
does
the
it
world?
feel like, why did it feel like you were like in the room, like behind the couch? Like,
I was. I was. Sorry.
Yeah.
It's part of it, again, is because if you're open to collaboration and other people's contributions, you will be sort of thinking about the player the whole time. So one of the things, and look, again, getting back to the word empathy, right? And as sort of an introvert, I think that we tend to be empathic people a lot of times. Is one of the most important roles of a game designer is to have empathy for their player. If what you're trying to do is create something and look at it with this God's eye view, it's going to be tangible, right? As opposed to constantly being able to pull in and out from this microscopic to this holistic view and say, all right, objectively, wipe my mental slate clean. What is the player seeing right now? What are they thinking? What do they want? Am I giving them a clear objective? Are there obstacles and opportunities clear in front of them? And from a narrative standpoint, you know, am I giving them enough room to kind of engage with the story? But so some of the stuff that was tangible for you, I think, is that we would often go through, and this is the other aspect of game development, which is iterative. You don't just sort of like, you know, say that's done, put it away, never touch it again, right?
Right.
Is that, you know, as you're playing the game, you go, what's a player going to do here? And if we're watching play tests, you know, we'd say like, oh, they're interested in this thing over here. We should actually reward them. So we want to inspire curiosity and then reward it. So a lot of times the things that felt like
Yeah,
the
that
game was
had that
responding to is
awareness.
'cause
Exactly right. It's because in a play test or when you guys had gone through it, you had seen, oh, someone really wants to look at this googly eyeball thing over here. Somebody really wants to look at this, you know, bas relief.
Yeah.
And so you're going to go and reward. You're going to go back and write some voiceover.
Yeah. And even just using yourself as a play tester, if you can put yourself in that mental state to look at your stuff with fresh eyes, to go, what am I implying here to the player? What are they going to want to look at? What are they thinking? What are they curious about? And the other aspect of this, when it comes down to the acting, is that we do the same thing with our cast traditionally. So we will, when the game is nearing completion, and as we go, we'll actually bring gameplay footage into the VO studio, and we'll have the cast, whoever's in there. So if it's Drake and Sully or whatever,
that explains it.
they watch the gameplay and they chase it. So that's what it's called, you know, kind of chasing picture. And so a lot of those reactions and things are improvisations from them. Some of it's scripted, but a lot of it is not. And it's the fact that they're actually reacting to the events. So, you know, when Drake goes, yeah, I'm so fucking sick of climbing, it's like, because Nolan's was fucking sick of, like, grunting, you know. But it's like...
Well, exactly, but that is exactly right. So, because the reason, I mean, a big part of why there's a lot of cool things that I think are about Uncharted, but a big part of it is the fact that Nathan is on your side. Like you are together in this experience, and his
observer. Yeah, right.
his mental narrative, like his running narrative, makes a lot of sense to a player and just feels very natural. It doesn't sound canned at all.
Yeah, well, we'd get that a lot. Is the fact that a player would be thinking something like, like when there's one more wave of enemies and he says something, it's like, yes, It's like, and it's because Nolan was saying it, you know? And also because we were playing it and going, oh, they're going to have that reaction, And so I think it is just constantly putting yourself in an empathetic state with your player and audience. And that's just a general game design rule. It's not specific to VO. It's just saying, how do you make a good game? So
I'm curious about something. So a lot of times one of the things that comes up with Uncharted is that people will bring up the fact that Nathan Drake is a very, very interesting, empathetic character. He's got this great running narrative behind him. And then he kills like 3,000 people.
No, you killed 3,000 people. Yeah.
But, listen, I wanted the gold really bad. And I had to get it, and you put all those people between me and the gold.
Yeah. Look,
Are you saying that a valid way to play Uncharted is to get to the first fight and be like, you know what?
Pacifist.
I can't believe in this.
Yeah, that's right.
And then to go to Taco Bell?
Just go home. Yeah. That would be awesome, actually. Well, look, I mean, and I've answered this question lots of times. And I think
I'm just curious what you think about it.
It's sort of unanswerable in a way. I mean, it's something we're all trying to figure out is that cognitive dissonance problem. And look, we were talking about it long before somebody, gave it a fancy phrase like
ludonarrative dissonance,
which is
right?
Fine. I'm not mocking. I'm just saying, we were talking about the cognitive dissonance aspect of like, well, how do you recreate one of these experiences in cinema where they have the benefit of it being 2 hours and not 12, and the benefit of editing. You can't turn around and look at the swath of enemies that, Indy has killed, because, they cut away, It's sort of like somebody gets stabbed off screen, and that kind of thing. It's like, well, we don't have that benefit. And also, at the end of the day, game design is about, introducing mechanics and then kind of revving on them and combining them with other mechanics and then sort of like letting the player achieve mastery. And so you can't do that with, 5 encounters.
Right.
So part of it is just sort of a little bit of a handshake between the player and the creator going, don't take this too seriously, don't take this too literally, but we're trying to give you both a good game and a good story. But it's great when you have something that doesn't introduce, look, even working on Star Wars helps, right?
Yeah.
Stormtroopers and droids and things. It's a lot easier to hand wave than, a bunch
Absolutely.
of
Than the reality
flesh and blood
of that.
pirates or something.
Exactly. Of that situation. So when I have done game writing, it's almost like scoring a film, at least in my experience, where a lot of it is done. The really expensive parts of game creation are creating all the assets and animating and audio and all this kind of stuff. And then, I'm relatively cheap as far as an asset is concerned inside this structure. It's almost like writing the script for a silent movie almost, where it's like the mouths are already moving in a certain way, and then I have to come in after the fact and sort of like, it's almost like Mad Libs in a way.
It's a bad way to do it.
Yeah, I was going to say, but I think I'm not saying that it's a great way, but I think that might be really common.
No, I think it is really common. And look, obviously, I only have a little window into, the world of game development through, the places I've worked. But I have a lot of friends that I talk to, and it's clear that,
they suffer
from that, yeah. And I think, people like me and Ken and Neil, we're in sort of this privileged position that is very rare of being both the creative director and the
Ken
writer.
Levine?
Yeah. And Neil Druckmann. There's not a lot of people that you can count off on your fingers that are lucky enough to be in that position, but I think it shows in the result, which is the fact that you have someone who is the shepherd and advocate for the story the entire time. As opposed to saying, oh no, it's something you bring at the end, to give it some color or something. I don't envy those of you that get brought in to do that, because then
it's like fridge poetry. It's just
Yeah, no, it makes no sense, and it's tangible in the final product, right? You know, the thing is that they should be inseparable. I mean, when we're blocking this stuff out, we're trying to look at, you know, what's the story we're trying to tell, and how can the player feel that? Like, how can they do that? You know, you know, one of the things we talk about, you know, looking at Uncharted 2, is we would often point to that sequence where you had the wounded cameraman that you had to carry, right?
Yeah.
Very short sequence, really, but. Thinking about what's the game doing and what does that make the player feel and how does that inform the narrative, how does the gameplay inform the narrative and vice versa, right? So that at that point, so when you're Drake alone, you feel pretty free, but you're also a little lonely, right?
Yeah.
Because your companions are cool and they're fun and it's fun to hang around with them and banter
And,
with them.
and well written.
Well, they better be if they're going to hang around, right?
Right.
You know, I mean, we've all played games where your companions were a pain in the ass and you just savored the times when they weren't around. But
I have a relationship like that, actually, just every day. I am made to
so
suffer.
this is a little breather for you.
Yeah, I'm made to suffer by a kind of human polyp
Yeah,
that,
it's right backstage.
yes.
Yeah. Now you put me off track. But so for instance, by that time in the story, you actually had, I mean, were there 5 characters with
Yeah.
you know, or all together? The weight of that, and also the literal weight of going, I'm trying to do this altruistic thing, and I've got my companions sort of, you know, pleading at me
Right.
to stop or begging me to not stop doing that, you know, moving slow. So that's something you could have done in a cutscene, but you go, well, all right, well, if we can actually code that up,
No.
and I can feel the burden.
Well, absolutely. And I think that my favorite part, and this is not cool, I mean, I'll just come out with it. My favorite part of all the Uncharted games is a part where you're walking slowly through a village in Nepal, and you hang out with a yak for a little while. There's like a yak.
Yeah.
You probably know the yak I'm talking about.
Well, I think there are 3 of them.
Yeah. But each yak for you.
That's right.
In my father's house, there are many yaks.
That's right.
You know. But when I walk up to this yak, but it's like we were talking about before. It's like I know about the yak. Drake knows about the yak. The yak has some awareness of Drake and me by proxy.
Yeah.
And it's just you were there and you thought about it and you rewarded me for my yak affection.
Yeah. Yeah, well, and that's the thing, too, is like going and looking at it, and Richard LaMarchand would talk about this, too, because that was his level that he was working on, is, you know, we knew we wanted you to have a little breather after all that drama, and then also...
And fire and weird shit.
Yeah, there was a lot of crazy shit, and there's a lot more to come, right? And so
Yeah.
we knew a couple things. Again, this is sort of like, well, what's narrative gameplay storytelling, right? Is you better get to see that place in its sort of harmonious, beautiful state, because you're going to come back and you better care about it when you have to fight your way back through it and defend it, right?
Right.
And the best way to do that is to let you engage with it. And I think Richard tells a story where we were playtesting and people were going up and trying to punch the villagers, right? And we're like, well, we can't have that. So we said, all right, contextual change, punch is handshake, you know? and so you could still interact, you know? There was still...
And it worked.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, it absolutely works, just that breath, right? And it happened because you were conscious of the player in that space. It seems like we have kind of a inside the actor studio sort of deal going on here.
Deliberately. That's why you're sitting in that chair.
Yeah,
and
no,
I'm here.
we
But
did
where's
the
your
whole,
blue cards?
we constructed this whole thing. What is your favorite word?
Well, it's clearly fuck, if you've been
Fuck.
paying attention.
Amy Hennig, ladies and gentlemen, and everybody in between.
I'm trying to work on that. It's fucking all of its derivations, and it's
Every as a prefix, as a suffix.
Yeah.
It's just it's the Swiss Army
But I
knife
use it way too much.
of swear words.
Yeah.
So I have we have to take things to a dark place right now.
God, this could go so many ways.
Yeah, and it has to do with the death of the author. Because people play games like Minecraft, procedurally generated games, and they emerge from these places with stories that they're very personal, they're very rich, interpretive. People watch them and their stories by the millions, and it seems like our time has come to an end.
I don't think so.
Right? Because the blocks are in a certain arrangement that's meaningful. As human creatures, we create stories, so it seems like it's basically time to hang it up.
Okay. I've had a good run.
Yeah, you know, I mean, listen, I have no complaints.
No.
I did my best
Well,
with
look.
the tools I was given.
Yes.
But now it's time for us to board the white ships and head out. You know, our time is over. And it's sad, but they got Lembas out there, I guess.
Gotta make way for the young. Well,
I take it you don't believe that.
No, of course not.
Yeah.
And it's not because I have anything derogatory to say about those games, because I think, like I said earlier, there's room for all of it, right? But I have a semantic disagreement with that, which is I don't think this series of emergent events is something you can call a story. I think it's...
Oh, you don't think it qualifies as a story, as a narrative?
For me,
Yeah.
I mean, and again, semantically, so I'm being a little pedantic here, but story implies authorship and intent, right? There is a shape to it, there's a craft to it, there's an intentionality, and then you can, that doesn't mean it has to be heavy-handed, Journey being a great example. That is, and Inside as well.
Yeah.
One of the most exquisitely authored stories, but that Genova...
Firm.
Yes. Yeah, but then Genova took a step back and said, but I'm going to leave so much room for you to interpret what you're experiencing that we're sharing this thing, right? But I don't know how you take author and intent out of that equation. And then one of the things we were talking about was how, and this is something that's a great touchstone for anybody who's telling stories, how the South Park guys, Trey Parker and Matt Stone, talk about when you're blocking your story, if it's just connected by and then, you've got a problem, right? And the worst version of what you just described is that, So sometimes when I think about these games or people feeling like they're telling their own stories in these games, and again, not to deride their experience, it's a little bit like somebody telling you their dream, right? I'm sure it was incredible for them, but it's, the most excruciatingly boring thing to sit through.
It's like when somebody tells you about their ranger.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like, that's an interminable fucking conversation.
Yeah, and look, and it's like, and you can see that they're reliving it, and they're just so excited.
No, it's like the studded leather, and then it's like, oh, but my bow, right? It's like...
Right. But that's because dreams are they're kind of a series of and thens, subconsciously we're probably not very good storytellers, or if there's buts and therefores, which is what kind of the next step of what
which is
Park
like
and
twists.
Yeah, exactly. They're basically saying, just to kind of finish that thought, and then I'll compare it to this, is that your story better be connected by buts and therefores, right?
The more butts per story, I mean, for me.
Yes, connected by butts. Something happens, but then this happens, therefore that happened.
Right.
But then, right?
It's a tree. It isn't a line.
Right.
Right.
Right. And look, I'm sure sort of emergently sometimes buts and therefores happen in these games, and so it feels like it's got some sort of a shape, but it's definitely sort of just an algorithmic shape. I think, there's an author there to really call it a story. And the same thing going back to the dreams, we were joking about the fact that somebody can tell you there's buts and therefores in dreams, but they make no fucking sense, right? So it's like, I was home, but it looked like school. Therefore, I tried to go to class, but I hadn't been there all semester. Therefore, I was taking a test I wasn't prepared for, but I was naked. It's like, there's buts and therefores, but it doesn't make for an interesting story.
It doesn't rise to the level.
Yes.
Yeah.
No. And so I just think we have to be careful, somehow that is considered an evolution of storytelling, or that is sort of the next step in our medium, I think is dangerous.
Dangerous?
Well, what you said, right?
Dangerous?
No, the games themselves aren't dangerous. The idea that is the dogmatic answer
Amy Hennig, video games are dangerous. PAX West 2016.
Yeah.
Resurgence of Jack Thompson.
Yes.
Hashtag clickbait.
That's right. That's the headline.
Now, so...
Ill-considered, how about that?
No.
Yeah.
It's, sure. Maybe not strategic.
Or just narrow. That's all. Too narrow. And I think that there's plenty of room for obviously the kind of games I make, because they're homaging genre,
Yeah.
there's a
Pulpy.
certain responsibility to doing that right?
Yeah.
That's different if, the genre shackles are off a little bit. But I just think that we should be careful about assuming that somehow, story and authorship are bad.
Yeah. So when it was announced that you had been attached to a Star Wars project, one voice, you can whistle. That's awesome shit. One voice cried out in joy.
One?
And it was my voice.
Okay.
Which I think is the opposite of what you might call the Alderaan scenario.
Yes.
I mean, the polar opposite.
Yes.
I know that, I tried to find interviews online where you talked about the project, and they're so cagey, but...
Yes, well, there's a few stakeholders,
You're like, it's
Disney,
like, exactly,
Lucasfilm, Electronic Arts, not litigious at all.
Yeah. But it's like, what can you tell us about your game? Well, there are conflicts in space.
I didn't say that. Actually, you made that up.
Okay, it's not a direct quote.
Yes. I've said lots of things about the game.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. And now there's a couple of things that are known, but one of the most interesting things that I saw you say out there in the wild was that Star Wars doesn't have like sidekicks. It has like co-protagonists. And I'd never heard the word co-protagonist. That could be a film school word.
I could have been a made-up word.
You could have made it up, but
it has a hyphen in it. So
tell me, describe for me the distinction between those two things, because I think that it's exactly right, but I'd never considered it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, so when I started working on this project, and again, I have to parse myself carefully to make sure
very careful.
I haven't had anything to drink yet today, which is good because it's not even noon.
Yeah.
But so I'm not going to just accidentally say anything, I don't think. But the task was to do the same thing that Lucasfilm is doing, and to do this with them. So I've been working really close. I've been blessed to be able to work really closely with the Lucasfilm Story Group, and Doug Chang, who's their art director and senior creative director over there, and Dave Filoni, and that whole team to say, what is authentic Star Wars and how do we make more? Because our project is an original story.
Yeah. And you know right away, even if you haven't sat down and like blocked it out and broken it down, and I'm sure you have the entire thing broken into its component atoms.
A little anal retentive, yeah.
Yeah, but you know if it's Star Wars or not right away.
Well,
I think.
But you need guides that have done this for a while and are also looking at everything else, because we're part of this same sort of emergent track of properties, obviously 7, 8, and 9, is evolving that story further, but films like Rogue One and the Han Solo film that's upcoming, even shows like Rebels and stuff like that. It's like everything is, and there's a lot of projects in the works. And the question is always, is this authentic Star Wars, right? And to understand kind of what that is, and to have touchstone people there at Lucasfilm to help us define what that is. Because again, I think some people might, without knowing otherwise, might go, okay, so they're doing a movie tie-in, or it is just authentic Star Wars can mean, did we get the ATST right? And of course, we have to do that too. But it's all about the new stuff, the new characters, the new story, the new locations, the new creatures, new tech, all this stuff that has to sit authentically alongside the Star Wars that we're so familiar with. And that takes kind of a gut, it takes love of the franchise, and it takes, mentors within that organization to go, maybe a little more this way,
Right.
And so that's sort of the task at hand with that. And then just to make sure, overall, it's about what does it mean to tell a Star Wars story? And so when we embarked on this, I did the same thing I did before we made Uncharted, which is I broke down in anal retentive detail what it means to be pulp action adventure, particularly Indiana Jones, of course, right?
Exactly, but it isn't actually that strange a move. Like going from something like Indiana Jones, Uncharted, to Star Wars, I
got a wheelhouse now. Apparently,
there's going to be some climbing.
You're
going to be climbing on shit. You're going to kill a lot of banthas.
Oh shit! I should write that down for me.
Bantha.
That's actually the subtitle, Bantha Killer.
Yeah. Star Wars, Bantha Killers.
I should probably change that now. Well, look, and when you come back to the word about the co-protagonist, and so when I broke it down, of course, it's a genre, action-adventure, right? It shares a lot of similarities, but there was a few things that jumped out that were really different about Star Wars, and I thought, okay, so some of the rules I had used making Uncharted no longer applied.
Yeah.
And so some of them are, for instance...
I want to know.
I know. No. Withholding. In Uncharted or in Indiana Jones, you actually kind of stick with Indy the whole time. There are times you cut away, but it's always something that informs what he's doing, like Marion in the tent.
Yeah, it's still about
You don't
that.
cut away to the bad guys, for instance. In Star Wars, you're always cutting away to the bad guys and seeing what they're doing. And meanwhile, back at the villain ranch, you know.
Yeah, you're always on the bridge of some crisp Star Destroyer.
Yeah, and so there's a little bit, and so one of the challenges from a game design perspective is this opens this up to this privileged observer problem, which is when we watch a film, we are the privileged observer, right? We're
Right.
not the protagonist. We can see their struggle is illuminated by the things we see that they don't, right? Suspense and all that kind of stuff. That we see the stakes are greater because we can see everything that's happening. And how do you do that in a game when we're supposed to identify with the protagonist and cut away to things that they don't know, right?
You probably can't. You should probably just stop.
Oh shit.
It might not be possible.
Oh shit. Or maybe we can.
Yeah.
So anyway.
You've created a prison of your own design.
Yes. No. Well, but you have to honor that, right? Because at the end of the day, if you say, our goal in this game is to tell an authentic Star Wars story in an interactive context,
right,
then that carries with it a whole lot of rules and baggage that we have to then kind of deconstruct and reconstruct and honor. So that was one example, but the other main example was the side characters in Indiana Jones and those types of films are just that. You know, these characters don't have arcs, Sal and Brody and Marion, and even that. Like, it's just they're kind of along for the ride. But if you think about that compared to Han and Leia and the other characters in Rebels and the other characters in Rogue One, I mean, you can see these are all ensemble stories. Yeah. And so if our game wasn't an ensemble game and we weren't telling an ensemble story, then it wouldn't pass the litmus test of going, does this feel like Star Wars?
In a game, it wouldn't be enough to have them be sidekicks. If in a game version of that story, they have to be playable.
I've probably said enough.
Okay. Yes. Yes.
But, so the point though being, it informs how you're telling the story as well as, yes, how you're going to break down the gameplay and what that means. So, you know, having a lone wolf protagonist wouldn't feel right. But you wouldn't quite know why.
Exactly. What's so funny is that it wouldn't feel especially like Star Wars, but generally speaking with Star Wars games, that's exactly how it's been done.
Right. And then the other thing is just honoring the fact that these characters, and look, this is just true of narrative in general, really, but like, they're underdogs, right? You know, and especially in a Star Wars story, they're gonna always be outgunned, outmatched, outmanned, right? And so they have to work together, and they have to be cleverer than their enemies. And so, therefore, how do you turn that into gameplay? How do you take that idea and then deconstruct it as mechanics and sequences that then play to that core principle? That's the challenge of making these kinds of things. It's not just going, well, let's bring in a writer later and they'll patch it up, let's spackle it up.
Yeah, exactly. All right, now everybody's mouths are already moving. There's 5 syllables.
That's right.
We need to make the most Star Wars-y syllables possible. Talk about the bantha hair, so we can get something like that. Now, you might have noticed that we have microphones out in the aisles, and it means something very specific. It means that you can ask questions of Amy Hennig, and she will answer them.
Or not.
Or not. If your question is dumb, we don't want it. She won a BAFTA Award, God damn it.
Actually, two, but
she's
anyway,
not here for your
who's
like.
Counting? Who's counting?
But if you want to know if she would rather contend with a horse-sized duck, you know, or a bunch of duck-sized horse, that's not the time. This is not the time for that. Let's fire away.
Sure.
So what is the least fun project you've worked on and why?
Oh, wow. Okay, I'm going to have to give very politically correct answers here.
This is the editor's role coming into play.
Yes, you can see, right? They're all fun for different reasons, and this is going to sound like a cop-out, but I mean, the challenge is anything that you're given, the ability to be creative within constraints or against, the forces of antagonism is actually what's kind of galvanizing, to be honest, right? I started my career, if it's any sort of form of comfort to anybody who's starting out, like I spent a year working on an Atari 7800 game that I finished and then it never came out.
Yeah.
I then went to EA and spent a year working on Bard's Tale 4, doing thousands of animations. Yes, there was a Bard's Tale 4.
I've heard the rumors.
I'll show you the art sometime. Yes. So, and then that did not come out. And then the next thing, I did a tiny bit of artwork for Desert Strike on the Genesis. Tiny bit, just the interstitial screen.
Just a little bit of the desert.
No, it's like the little story things. Like guys hanging from ladders under helicopters. Might have been a little prophetic, actually, thinking about it. That seems to be a theme. And then I stumbled into a very strange job, which was being the lead designer on Michael Jordan Chaos in the Windy City, which is an incredible game, and don't you say otherwise.
Is it? I have never played it. What is Michael Jordan Chaos in the Windy City?
That is the zen of that game. What am I playing? Right?
It's like, what is the sound of one hand dunking? Is it like?
Yeah. And look, I'm actually proud of that game, so I'm not being facetious, but there were two ideas on the table at that time to take EA's sports properties and turn them into other kinds of games. One of them was Shaq Fu, and the other one was...
Which is passed into legend.
And the other one was a Michael Jordan platform game. That was how it was described, Michael Jordan Adventure. And so I think I got the long straw in that deal. But anyway, it was actually a great opportunity to go, okay, well, this is a crazy concept. I don't know who this is for, right? But let's use it as an opportunity to actually make a cutting-edge, side-scrolling adventure on the Super Nintendo, right?
That's optimism for real.
Right, so this is the best answer to that question that he asked, which is, so, what's the worst? There isn't a worst, right? And so the point, though, is you make lemonade. And so we actually did some pretty cutting edge. All the animation was rotoscoped. I did a ton of it in 3D, which we then rasterized and put in the games of the enemies. We actually did actual 3D, because we had enemies made out of basketballs. And they animated really, really smooth.
On brand,
Right. The artwork was actually done in markers and then painted and then scanned in. So it was like we actually did an early form of data streaming because we wanted more palettes. And so we figured out that if you had, 16 palettes, I think that's the right number, but you wanted to change up the color of a level.
Yeah.
That in the same way that we're streaming data for the games now, if you're like, I'm in chunk A, then I'm in chunk B, and when I'm in chunk B, I have chunk C loaded.
Yep.
When I get to chunk C, we dump chunk A.
Exactly.
Well, we're doing the same thing with palettes, so that if I was using the first half of the palette here, and then here I was using the second half of the palette, then we could dump this and put in another palette here. So we were actually using it to learn a whole bunch of crazy stuff.
This sounds cool as shit.
You should play this game.
Wow. All right, well, thank you very much.
I was just wondering, how did you first get into video games?
Well, I always played them, right? So that helps. I was a huge nerd when I was a kid. My voice said 1977.
Say it ain't so, Amy Hennig.
Does it show? 1977 was sort of the catalyst for my whole life between Dungeons and Dragons and the Atari and 2600 and Star Wars.
Star Wars, yeah.
It's like that pretty much set me on my course. But I also, when I got a little older and I was, in high school and college and stuff, I had a lot of other things on my mind. I wasn't going to the arcade anymore, even though that's where I spent every weekend before that. And it was just a situation where, we were saying that people say that luck is where preparation meets opportunity, right? which is really, really true. It's not just from Oprah. It's like an old Roman thing. It's like a Roman senator. It's a thing. And so the point is that you have to be open, be present, and then be available when an opportunity strikes. And be ready when it strikes. So for me, I was going to film school, which I had no money, and I had no place trying to do everything I was doing. So I was working full-time and going to school full-time. So I took any job I could. I was doing illustrations for technical manuals, I was doing software testing. I was writing contracts for a biomedical research firm over in Emeryville. It was like insane. And one of the things I stumbled into was I went to a yard sale. I was being an extrovert. I went out of the house. And I went to a yard sale, and a friend from high school just happened to show up, and he was like, oh, hey, what are you doing? What are you doing? This is after high school. And he said, oh, I'm moving to Texas, but you know what? Like, I was supposed to make this video game with this friend of mine from Eagle Scouts, and I'm supposed to do all the art and animation and stuff, and I gotta leave. Do you think you could do that? And I'm just seeing dollar signs. Like, at this point, I wasn't like, video games? I was like, paying for college, right? I was like, what's it gonna pay? And so I took on this Atari 7800 game. I did all the design, all the art, all the animation.
What the hell?
Yeah, and it was purely at the time just to think about how am I paying for school.
Yeah.
And then I kind of did the light bulb thing and went, oh, holy shit, here's this pioneer industry. Here's this frontier. Like, I dropped out of film school and used that work that I did to get a job at Electronic Arts in 1991. But that was just complete serendipity, right? So you just have to be thinking about it, working on it. I've been playing games. I mean, and that first game was a complete ripoff of every Nintendo game I'd played. I literally had copies of Nintendo Power Magazine and a magnification loop, and I was like studying how they made the dudes, because we had 3 colors and 1 page of graphics, you know. And so it was just complete kind of luck, and then just kind of realizing that there was a frontier I was interested in that I hadn't even considered, you know.
Wow. Thank you.
Hi, Amy. So my question is, as a storyteller who has to inject a lot of your own experience into your own work, but also working in an industry where it's very work-intensive and long hours, so I guess my question is, how do you balance the two of being an actual human being with real-life experiences, and then trying to work in an industry where it is very mentally intensive as well?
Well, look at me. I'm actually only 26, but look how I've aged. No, I'm 52. I don't know, dude. Like, I am lousy at the whole work-life balance thing. I mean, I have, both because of my own kind of personal creative impulses and just the demands of the industry, worked very, very long hours for a very long time and neglected a lot of other things in my life, which, of course, you get to my age, you go, oh, shit, you know, like, I should probably do some of those things I never did.
Take down the Christmas lights, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yes.
Get him the fuck off of there.
Put them up in the first place. That's the problem. This is Christmas?
You know what, here, just take a week and just put them up and down like 5 times.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, so I would say, as somebody who has failed to do this well, yes, consume other media, experience other things. That's actually where the ideas come from. It's not chewing our own cud. You know what I mean? So do get yourself out there and do better at that than I have, I think. But it's a tough thing. And I think the reason it's tough in this industry, too, is that, you know, it will sort of eat you up and demand as much time as you're willing to give it. But we're also inclined to give it that much time because we love what we do. So we kind of have to be protective from ourselves a little bit. I don't know if that answers your question.
No, that's perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi. When you're creating a sequence like anyone from Uncharted 3, you ideally want the player to go through that sequence unhindered, without dying, without anything like that, ideally.
Yeah.
How do you balance that and the knowledge that the player might die, might have to restart that sequence 5 or 6 times because they're doing something wrong, or they're just not hitting triangle at the correct time?
Yeah.
How do you balance that?
I don't know. It's a tough problem. Like, some of it is play testing, right? We would do really rigorous play testing to see where things were spiking, because we don't want that. I mean, like if you want to have a peak difficult event, yes, you want to tune for that, but those spikes better not be very spiky. You want to like try to tune some of that stuff out, especially in something that really isn't meant to be kind of a failed state challenge, right? You want the player to experience the thing and kind of have all the ups and the highs and lows of it and then get through it and then move on, right? So I think those types of things you just tune to be pretty easy, but there's sort of illusion of drama, And I know that sounds counterintuitive as a game, but I think that's why we just do them infrequently and don't have them overstay their welcome. That's not really your core gameplay. But the tricky part is when we're looking at those things and going, oh yeah, if they fail this one, if they fuck it up, it's really going to throw the game out of whack. And we see that in games all the time where it's like, it's so dramatic, you're making the big leap, you're jumping for a thing, and then you die. And then it's sort of like, then you're like, yeah, I know, scream, oh God, no, I'm going to play, it's breaking, you know what I mean? It's like, these things they overstay their welcome pretty fast. So I would just say tune them down to be actually pretty easy, but just sort of like emotionally dramatic.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
The finger holds and the...
Well, the thing is some of this shtick, these gags are getting overplayed too. That feeling of like, oh no, it's breaking. It's like, I know you're just going to automatically catch me on, or you're going to throw up a button and I'll go, oh, okay, I caught. It's sort of like, we have to invent some new stuff.
Yeah.
I wanted to follow up with what I thought was kind of interpreted as a negative comment about bringing in a writer late and you're in a sort of a Mad Lib context. One of the games I finished recently that I really enjoyed the story was the Talos Principle, and I'd read later that game was basically a set of puzzles that they brought someone in and then made this large story out of it, and I was really impressed by that. I was like, wow,
I would never have believed that. Have you played Talos
No,
Principle?
not yet, no.
When you go home, I will gift you a copy on Steam.
Okay.
So the
I'll
follow-up
make
question I
sure
had.
this happens. Okay. I find that very hard to believe.
Yeah.
I assume that story and that gameplay are so enmeshed. I would never have believed that.
Right. So the question was, where do you? sorry, Jerry. I didn't mean to-
Damn.
I just didn't want to get off track because I'm nervous. Right.
Yeah.
The question was, where is the crossover point between like a foundation and a sort of an overbearing set of constraints?
In terms of like story, feeling
Sure.
too
Crafting the story. Yeah.
Well, look, we have to be the most flexible storytellers in any medium, I think, right? And that kind of comes back to that feeling of don't white knuckle the creation, right? Not only just in terms of how you work with people, you need to invite them in and say, I'm going to give you a framework, and then this is ours. Let's do it together, right? Whether it's your actors or your teammates. It also requires an incredible amount of patience because it's iteration, right? The idea of, you don't write a script and go, let's make that, right? Yeah. It's like literally these scripts are written, out of sequence, a scene at a time, over 2 years, as you're writing and recording as needed, right? And so what that means is it is a living thing, yeah? So you might have to go, oh, that thing that I thought was going to be a level just disappeared because we don't have time to make it. Can I sew it together with a cut scene, a bit of dialogue? Can I pitch something else that would be cheaper? So we have to be very creative storytellers and problem solvers. So it can't be this rigid thing, So I understand how something could have a story written afterwards.
Yeah.
Because or in the middle of, or 2/3 of the way through, but as long as everybody was sort of flexible and you're creative. Look, Soul Reaver wasn't originally supposed to be a sequel to Legacy of Kain. I had to be very flexible in thinking about how to make that true. And then they started making Blood Omen 2 while I was making Soul Reaver, and they were doing other things. And I was
Right.
like, now I got to be really creative about how I'm tying everything together in Soul Reaver 2 and Defiance. So it is, you have to embrace the fact that it's actually a problem-solving challenge, as
Liquid.
opposed to just going, I wrote this thing, we're making this thing.
Yeah.
Right? That's never the job.
Thank you. All right, we have time for one more question.
I'm sorry, I'm giving long-winded answers.
No. This is exactly what I wanted.
Okay.
All right, I don't know how to follow that question, but I'm a big fan of Jack and Daxter, so
Nice. We didn't have a chance to bring it up.
yeah, I haven't heard anything. So my question was, why did the character Jack
Oh,
get-
Jesus, I'm not going to be able to answer this, but go.
Oh, okay. I was gonna ask, why is he mute?
I wasn't there when that game was made. I made Jack 3.
Oh, you made Jack 3.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. In a year. They were like, come, join us. We have a year to make Jack 3. I was like, oh, holy shit. He was mute, I believe, because, again, it's sort of like you want to have a vessel for the player. Now, I shouldn't speak for Jason and Andy and all those guys, right? But, like, that was the thought. Now, and that you have a commentator in Daxter, right?
Yeah.
Who gives you the companionship and the chatter and all of that, but having a mute character. And look, we've seen a lot of games like this, right? It's a lot of first-person games are certainly this. Everybody chatters at this character who never speaks because it's sort of meant to be a vessel for you. It's a challenging thing to pull off, though, because now we're so used to games where people do talk and sort of investing ourselves in those characters alongside the author that I think it feels weird when people are mute now.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Amy Hennig,
Thanks.
industry legend.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks for coming out.
Thank you. Thank you.
Here, his handshake. Here. Here, let's do this.
Wow.